Hey guys, welcome. This is the second chapter of Canary by Cloud9 and 3/4. Chapter 2. The greatest adventures start with the humblest beginnings. The fact that Midoriya wasn't trying for UA's hero course seemed to satisfy Kachan. He certainly wasn't happy that Midoriya would be trying for any course at all in his dream school, but general studies would have to do. It's not like the two would often cross paths anyway, let alone speak to each other. Midoriya was eventually concluded that his mother knew about his poor relationship with Kachan. Whether she had ever spoken with Mrs. Bakugo about the matter was another story. Nonetheless, she didn't make him travel to EA grounds alongside his old friend. That unfortunately didn't save the two from meeting at the gates. Kachan glared at him. Stay out of my way, Deku, he hissed. Midoriya didn't say anything at all. He stepped back frantically and let Kachan waltz in ahead of him. A few of the other people around glanced curiously as he stood head down just outside the gates. Once Kachan was out of sight, Midoriya shook his head and stepped inside the school. I need to get a grip. I'm not going to be in his class anymore, so there's no need to worry. Yeah, maybe his words won't get stuck in my throat anymore. And he wasn't looking where he was going. He tripped upon a loose tile, about to fall first into the ground and make an absolute fool of himself in front of everyone. But then suddenly the ground stopped growing closer to his face. No, he stopped midair. Are you okay? Someone laughed. Midoriya almost yelped in surprise at the pink-cheeked girl beside him. I stopped you with my quirk. I would have asked first, but I figured you wouldn't mind me helping. He just stared at her. She didn't seem to notice, only propping him upright, deactivating her quirk and waving goodbye, before skipping off towards the hero and course entrance examinations. The hero course. A different world to his own. Midoriya shook the brief thoughts of friendship and panics over actually interacting with the girl. To refocus on the upcoming exams, they would determine his future after all, hero course or not. There were two parts to the UA's hero course exam, a practical and theoretical. However, for general studies, the soon-to-be students were instead giving two papers, one far more challenging than the other. It was clear as Midoriya's pen scribbled across the exam that whoever set these questions did not intend for all the necessary knowledge to be in place. Some were far too advanced and complicated for your average middle school graduate. To complete the fullest extent, however, Midoriya was not your average middle school graduate. Question 18. Explain how quirklessness is inherited and how it can be identified by specialists. It was practically made for him to have the last question revolving around quirklessness. Was to be expected, of course, but this was the first year that UA allowed quirkless people to enter any of their courses. That included hero course, but as many had said before, it was time Midoriya got his head out of the clouds and strived for a dream that was more attainable. Midoriya's mind raced as he batted the top of his pen against his lip. There are 11 marks available for this question. It's clear they want us to use medical terms and clearly describe the link between the lack of a quirk and an extra joint in your little toe, he thought before beginning to write. Quirklessness is a hereditary condition caused by two recessive alleles. This means both the mother and father must have been a carrier of quirklessness or quirkless themselves in order to have a quirkless child. Despite having quirks themselves, this is because the gene allows the expression of a quirk is dominant, meaning if the dominant meaning if only one dominant allele is present, it will mask the effect of a recessive allele and produce a quirk. The probability of having a quirkless child if both parents are carriers is 25%. This is probability isn't fixed because freak mutations can occur resulting in quirk entirely different to the child's parents is in rare. Resulting in quirks entirely different to the child's parent in rare situations, carriers of quirklessness are increasingly rare, meaning the percentage of a population which are quirkless is less than 5%. However, a majority of this number are rather elderly, and the proportion of quirkless people who are in my generation is only around 20%. This means the percentage of people who are of my age and quirkless is only 1%. Quirklessness can be difficult to diagnose, and some quirks can be invisible and difficult to identify at a young age. However, for quirk doctors, this can be a little easier. Autosomal linkage is where two genes are positioned very close to each other on the same chromosome, close to each other in DNA, and are therefore frequently inherited together. The recessive alleles of quirklessness are inherited alongside an extra joint in the subject's little toe. A doctor needed only to take an X-ray if you see if his joints are present in order to diagnose quirklessness. The chance of having the extra joint and having a quirk is rarer than quirklessness itself. If you don't take account into any situation where the quirk results in extra bones or joints being present in genetic inheritance, chromosomes, and can cross over and exchange pieces of DNA during meiosis. However, the recombinant frequency of quirklessness and having an extra joint is low because the alleles are so close together that the inheritance of either gene separately is near to unheard of. Have you come across anyone particular interesting in the entrance exam this year, All Might? Questioned Principal Nezu. The skeleton man sighed. Unfortunately, no. There were a few who received a good number of rescue points, but no one made it in particular a grand impression. A shame, really. But perhaps Sir Naida's suggestion will do you well? I hope so. I have faith in young Mirio. He seems a promising candidate, but I fear he'll refuse the quirk. The two were sitting in the principal's office. Yagi gazed at the results board for the first-year hero course exams, while Nezu happily finished marking the theoretical papers for general and business studies. It's a possibility he has done so well in his own abilities recently, and could wish for another, but less fortunate soul to take up your mantle. Yeah. What about you, Principal Nezu? Anyone you found interesting this year? Why, yes, I most certainly did. Yagi blinked in surprise. You did? From the hero course? No, he smiled. Quite the opposite, for you see, I put a particular difficult question in the general studies examinations this year, but one student had breezed through it all with no apparent difficulty. You should read his brief essay on the inheritance of quirklessness. Quite stunning. I would expect such an answer from a graduate of UA, not simply a future student. Quirklessness, Yagi frowned, accepting the paper from Principal Nezu. He scanned through the answer, neat handwriting and outstanding knowledge for some of his age. Yes, but I would expect he's done quite a bit of research into the matter, considering he's quirkless himself. Yage almost dropped the paper in surprise. Quirkless? In his generation? If you read his report, you find that only 1% of our population fit those parameters, the principal chuckled. To think we could have missed out on such a bright young man if we continued not to accept quirkless people I'm almost ashamed of whoever set the rule to begin with. However, it would have been necessary back along when quirklessness was more common. Ahmed closed the paper and flipped to the front. He has a very high mark, only dropping a few here and there. Izuku Midoriya. Where had he heard this name before? Midoriya's weekly schedule has been a busy one. Although he mastered instruments and dropped their lessons, he found himself with more and more free time. That was why on a Thursday evening he was wandering down the coastline, guitar bag in hand, looking for somewhere quiet and desolate to play. He used to learn piano on Thursday. It was guitar on Tuesdays, violin on Wednesdays. Mondays were always free, and so were Fridays. On Friday, his father called from the United States. He would talk to his wife for a while before Izuku arrived, and he would tell him about his week. Izuku had never much to say. He'd tell him about his music and rehearsing for the entrance exam, but nothing more. Saturdays and Sundays were reserved for dance classes. The thing is with dance is Midoriya could never really get enough of it. It was awfully scary at first, but he soon realized that everyone else there was frightened as he was to mess up or look like a fool. They learned routines, but sometimes together, sometimes alone. Never a master of one, but decent at everything they tried. It was fun, but God forbid anyone outside the club ever learning about Midoriya's past times. Kachan knew about the drum lessons, but that was only because they'd bumped into each other there, and solemnly agreed to never speak of it again. Not that it was too difficult for Midoriya. Dagobah Beach. What a tip. The only ones around here to listen to Midoriya's music were the seagulls, and he was more than happy for it. Perhaps he should do something about all this rubbish. Midoriya supposed this stretch of coastline could have been beautiful without all the trash. He wandered down into the sand, being careful for where he trod. Midoriya made his way to the front of the piles of rubbish so he could look at the sun setting over the ocean. Precariously, the boy clambered on top of one of the towering peaks of junk and sat there on top of what appeared to be an old microwave. He balanced his guitar case under his feet and checked to see if the instrument was in tune. He sat there for hours, strumming along whatever tune surfaced his mind, watching the whales lap at the shore. Eventually, when the light of day was all gone, but he packed his things and started to wander home. He didn't seem the familiar gaunt man sitting on the bench not far away, humming along to those same tunes as he watched Midoriya's silhouette contrast against the orange of the sunset. Yagi smiled. Izuku Midoriya, huh? He was the one to watch. That was for sure. Izuku? Izuku! Midoriya frantically tossed off his shoes and ran inside, worried about what his mom might be calling him for at such a time. Mom, he replied, dropping his guitar in the kitchen. Ah, Izuku, she exclaimed, hurrying into view. Your letter from UA. It's here. But it's only been a few days, he thought with a worried frown. He couldn't quite tell if that was good news or bad news. Midoriya accepted the letter and sat down on the sofa. His mother joined him, faltering as she asked if it was okay to see Yue's response at the same time as him. He didn't protest, but his hands were shaking as he opened the envelope. The letter fell out of his lap, the bold golden logo of Yue staring at him from the back of the message. Slowly but surely he turned over the paper and learned the nature of his fate. Dear Izuku Midoriya, congratulations. It's with great pleasure that we at UA offer you a place in General Studies, Class 1C for the following academic year. Inka cried. You got in! I'm so proud of you! Midoriya merely grinned. His eyes were never leaving the paper, transfixed on those first few words. It was only after much squealing with delight from his mother that Midoriya was finally able to read the remainder of his letter. She hurried off to bring him a celebratory dinner, which he was certain she would have given him despite the result. It spoke about the many opportunities at UA offered in general studies course students. The close interactions with pro-hero teachers and the opportunities beyond graduating there. But after that, it was clear that the acceptance letter was more personalized than Midoriya thought it would have. Midoriya, you were the highest-ranking student in the theoretical papers across all the first year's examinations with a staggering 91%. Even against particularly challenging question that even third years at the UA would struggle to answer at the level of detail that you portrayed. We did not expect many of our candidates to exceed a mark of 80%, particularly when scoring points in these tricky questions. The second paper was most impressive. Was your answer to the question surrounding inheritance of quirklessness, portraying this scientific knowledge far beyond what was expected of someone your age. It was only when we checked your background that that the reason behind this became clear. Midoriya gulped as he read on, fearing the worst. Perhaps I'm saying he needed to prove he was more than quirklessness if he hoped to succeed at UA. What if you will be the very first quirkless student attending UA? You should accept our offer, but let us promise you that we will not let you down, not permit at any bigotry towards your condition or selective muteness, as stated in your medical records. If you have any questions or concerns surrounding this, please do not hesitate to contact me. Yours sincerely, Principal Nezu. Midoriya hadn't noticed his mom leaning over his shoulder, reading the words as he did. This sounds all very positive, don't you think, Izuku? She said cheerfully, pushing a bowl of katsudon towards him. He hesitated before putting the letter down and turning to his food. He smiled. Yeah, I guess it is. And his mother smiled wider. But neither of them could have guessed what his start at UA would lead to. This was Canary, Chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed, and see you till Part 3. Quick reader's note. I am not very good at reading out loud, so don't mind any mistakes or stutters in this podfic.